iconic Hindi film of all time, Sholay. Please put your hands together for Mr. Ramesh. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. I'm a little intimidated after.
I think you have no reason to be intimidated.
Can I be as nice and good?
Can you be as frank as Radhika was? Because she was very frank.
Yeah.
Just then. Well, we want you to be frank because we want all the stories that nobody's ever heard before. But you know, I almost feel like I'm doing you a discredit by saying, oh, the man who made Sholay, because your legacy is so much more incredible than just Sholay. Does that sometimes, I'm going to go straight in here, I'm going to say, does Sholay sometimes feel like more of a burden than a blessing?
I don't think it's a burden, but yes, it overshadows the rest of my work. And I think if Sholay is that big, it's mine.
It is yours.
So why should I do that?
You know, it's quite significant that we're here in London because you actually studied at LSE here in London. Was that just a cover-up before you wanted to tell your family the truth that you wanted to get into the movie business?
Maybe, but I didn't ever think about it like that. But I was told that, look, you want to go out into the world, you should learn a little bit. Even now, I think if I had learned a little more about money, I would have been able to keep a lot more.
You know, you went back to India and your first film was Andaz, starring two superstars at the time, Shami Kapoor and Rajesh Khanna. Was that intimidating for you, first-time filmmaker on the sets, two people who were really at the top of their game at that time, and you directing both of them?
Well, didn't start like that. It started the film to make it about a widow and widower. So it was Shami Kapoor and Hema Malini. The Rajesh Khanna role was meant to be there, but it had not yet cleared. In those days, things happened as they happened. So Rajesh Khanna became a super hit in the year I started it, but later, a film called Aradhana sent him all the way skyrocketing. We introduced him in a film called Raz, which was 4 years earlier. So the relationship was very good, and when this started to develop interestingly, we approached him and he immediately agreed. So that was a blessing in disguise in a film that actually, very strangely, it was not his film. And yet he carried it away. And he gave it so much life. Both things, that he did a beautiful job and it came after his success. So that also sort of propelled the film and him further. And of course that unforgettable song, Zindagi Ek Safar Hai Suhana. So I think it seemed that my destiny was somehow being guided in the right way. It seemed to be like that. I still think a lot of things have happened which may not have happened, just happened.
You worked with Hema Malini for your first three films, Andaz, Sitara Gita and Sholay, which I know everybody wants to hear about Sholay. We will talk about Sholay, but in a few minutes' time. What was so special about Hema Malini? What was it about your collaboration with her?
Again, I tell you.
Please do.
Sorry for cutting you.
No, please.
But she wasn't the original choice.
For which film?
Sitara Gita.
Really?
No.
Who was?
My two guys, my right-hand guys, Salim and Javed, they've been great for my work. And they've been wonderful. But all of them said, no. So we all went for Mumtaz.
Right.
But Mumtaz at that time was on the top of her career, and she had about half a dozen films on hand and was unable to find time. And I was in a hurry. I wanted to start immediately. So while I was dubbing for Andaz, I spoke to her on the mic from the inside. She was dubbing in the theatre.
Yeah.
And I popped the question.
Kiranji, don't get worried, not that question. A casting question.
So I said, would you like to do my next film? Yeah, of course. Sure.
That simple?
No. Then I said, it's a double role, Sita or Gita. What? You think I can do that role? Playing two characters? I said, yeah, like Ramo Shah. I said, me playing Ramo Shah, it's too. I think she got a bit nervous about it. I said, look, we've done a film. I think you can do it. You got to work very hard. Yes, it's going to be much more than this film. She was, just say yes, and we'll go for it. And if you work hard enough, you might even get the award. And that's what happened.
What were the technicals like at that time in making a double role film? I mean, there are scenes where both Hema Malini's are on screen together. How did that actually work technically?
Oh, a little bit of trick work, but mostly we shot in a way, it was scripted so well that we didn't really have them coming face to face with each other too often.
There's a scene at the end.
Only towards the end it happened. So we could, most of the time, deal with a double and one Hema in this, and a double and one Hema in that role. Did
people think you were brave at the time? Because you were making a film with one female stars playing two characters, but really it was the female characters that were driving that film completely. Was that brave for the time? People think it's brave today to do that.
I don't think it was that brave. I think it was good. It was needed, and somehow it proved correct. Yes, you always take a chance when you do something that's not expected. So when I decided on it, and that's why I said it, Salim Javed have always been absolutely perfect. Even they were doubtful. They said, "You sure? Not if you've got the confidence, you're with you, you will also help her do it." And they did. And they would always be on the sets, and Javed Saab with his prompting and dialogues and pushing things correctly. And so it all turned out very well. And she really worked hard for it. She really worked very hard.
And she was brilliant. I think it's probably one of Hema Malini's most iconic roles, even today, is Sita or Gita. So you are now the hit director of two films, Andaz and Sita or Gita. But you were also heavily influenced by American Westerns at the time, and Hollywood. In fact, you've said on several occasions that you wanted to see the kind of technicals that you had in Hollywood implemented in India too.
Yeah, you see, the reason is, after Sita or Gita, we sat again, Salim Javed, myself, and my father. We sat in the room and said, now what? Sita or Gita was a big hit, so what do we follow up with? And it was just a kind of film, a genre of film that we decided upon. An action adventure. That was the first decision. And that's where this comes in. We wanted to do something. Why can we not do in this country what the West does? They make such wonderful films. That quality of film the technique and why can't we bring into our films? With our kind of storytelling, but why not with that kind of technique? So that was I was impressed always by the big Hollywood films, impressed by great British director, with Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago, and of course, Magnificent Seven and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and all these kind of films. And then the spaghetti westerns came.
And that's what really inspired Sholay.
All of these.
All of them together.
Not just. The spaghetti western was a further spur because, look, even they've done it, they've succeeded, so why not now? Which this was now then called the curry western.
I think it was not a western at all. It was an iconic piece of cinema that is going to forever be considered.
At that time, there was a critic in England who called it a curry western.
That critic didn't know that it was going on to go on and become such a big.
Not just in the beginning, yes.
Let's bust some casting myths here with Sholay, because there's so many stories about the casting of this film. And actually, casting is something that follows a lot of your films in many ways. There was lots of speculation, but with Sholay specifically, did you cast Amitabh Bachchan because his films were flopping?
Honestly, yes.
Why was it important to cast, with the most amount of respect here, a flop actor?
I'll tell you the route. When the story was finally written, this role was still to be cast, and we'd already signed even Gabbar, Danny Denzongpa as Gabbar. So now this last casting had to be done. Salim Javed said that this young man is working very well, Mr. Bachchan. They were doing a film with him, Zanjeer. But of course I did not get to see that. I on my own had seen two films of his. Anand, where he did the serious role, and Bombay to Goa, where, bus like that, this tall guy was so agile and so wonderful. So he could do a light role, he could do a serious role. The actor in him is there. I was also convinced. They told me this. And we still had not made up our mind. I hadn't said, yes, definitely, let's do it. A lot of people in the industry were saying, oh, don't cast him.
Really?
Because his films were falling like 9 pins. The final decision when I finally made it was like this. I already had 3 stars. Dharmendra, Imamani and Sanjeev Kumar, who were in Sita or Gita. So they were already signed on. I want an actor. I don't want a star because I won't be able to handle so many stars on the set. So we signed him on with this because at that time there was talk of even Shatrughan Sinha, who was coming up very fast.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I was afraid of. To handle so many egos on the sets won't be easy. And we finally decided, let's go with Mr. Bachchan. Dharamji gave the last shove. I don't know what the politics was, but he was the one who called me and said, no, you must take it.
Well, this is interesting because I'm going to come on to Dharamji now, because how did you convince Dharmendra to play, or to not play Thakur? Because that's the role he originally wanted.
He wanted to play Gabbar also. Everybody who heard the script wanted to play Gabbar. So the script was so damn good that, and Gabbar was the most colorful character.
Yeah.
Dharamji said, why should I not play Thakur.
He was just having his pick of all of them.
Yes.
He would have said Basanti at one point, right?
No, that he did in Sita or Gita. He did that film because of her.
Yeah, this is what I want to know. So why did you, or how did you convince him to not play Thakur at that point? Because I hear there's a very interesting story here.
No. He was definitely keen on doing his role, because he said, because I told him, he said, if I play Thakur, I said, no, yes, I can't play Gabbar, but maybe I'll play Thakur. I said, but you won't get Hema Malini.
And Sanjeev Kumar will be there as well. I believe that was a contributing factor at the time.
It was very interesting, but the final decision was all genuine for the right thing.
You're described as a perfectionist on the sets of Sholay, taking up to 3 weeks to shoot just one particular sequence or one particular shot.
Every sequence.
Every
like
sequence,
that. Yes.
like that. Were the people around you buying into your madness, or were people questioning your vision at that time?
Questioning.
And how did you combat that? How did you convince them? Your father was the
I didn't
producer.
listen to them, and I didn't listen to anybody.
Well, it's a bit different when your father's the producer.
Father never said anything.
Really?
Not a word.
Even when you went 2 crore over budget?
That's right.
And I know 2 crore doesn't sound like a lot now, but the whole budget of the film was supposed to be
1 crore.
1 crore.
Correct. And he went to 3. That was my father. He never said a word. He was convinced that whatever I was doing right.
You know, you said that Dharamji was that final push in making you cast Mr. Bachchan, but did the dynamics change during the making of that film? Because by the time Sholay did release, Amitabh Bachchan was a superstar.
Yeah, but so was
He was, but there's a slight difference there.
he grew, he kept growing. His first film, Zanjeer, his second film was Diwar, as a release. In both films, he started to shoot up. So he was well on his way, and Sholay just propelled him even further. Then after that, there was no looking back for him. So, I think Amitabh Bachchan is Amitabh Bachchan. So, maybe he proved to be a long-term, even today. His last film, Badla, has been appreciated tremendously, and he's done a super job.
When you see now the way Sholay is entrenched into modern day pop culture, the dialogues are used sometimes in context and sometimes not in context, the scenes are remembered so lovingly, how do you feel? Because you've also said that you don't feel like the film is yours anymore.
No, why should I feel it's not? And that's what I said, at least it's mine.
You've also said...
Didn't I say that?
Yes. You said that here, but in another interview you said you've given it away to the people.
No, I didn't say that.
You've been misquoted then, sir.
It belongs to the people. Whenever a film goes public, is on the screens, it belongs to the people. They can maul it, or they can raise it to the skies, or keep it in their hearts for 44 years.
Things could have turned out quite differently, couldn't they? Because Salim Javed actually went to Manmohan Desai with the same 2 lines.
Correct.
For Sholay. That would have been a very different state of affairs.
No, I don't think that was his kind of film. And that he didn't, I didn't steal it from him.
No, of course not. But imagine if Sholay hadn't come your way.
When we decided on the fact, on this aspect, that we're going to make an action-adventure film, then Salim Javed came up and said, we have a story, 3-4 lines of it. At that time, he was an army officer, Thakur, and then, and these 2 had worked with him in the same, as young soldiers. So, and he saw that same bravado in that kind of atmosphere. So he So all we did was shift that to the police officer and felt that basic line was damn good. So that gives, you're making an action adventure film, but you have a definite storyline in it. So there's a start to it, and then at the end to it you reach that. So that was good storytelling, so it had to be, so we fitted that in, and then we sat on the script, and it was done in record time, a month or two, we finished everything. It was brilliant the way they worked on it, and I had a complete script, which everyone who heard it, the actors all completely went overboard. And as I said, they wanted to do this role or to do that role. They were all interesting roles. And of course, even Basanti stood out in her.
Yeah. I mean, I think Basanti is one of the most iconic characters of the film. You know, I almost feel like every person has a different favorite character in Sholay.
So even the side characters, Mosi or Surma Bhupali or the jailer, or the smallest of characters, even the Nai, that, I mean, it's unbelievable in Sholay how many characters are remembered. And Mangal Sahab, and Imam and his son, and just endless.
So does it feel surreal now, having made one of, or actually without one of, the most iconic Hindi film of all time?
I guess we all worked really hard, came up with a good film, and we knew it was going to work, but nobody thought, neither did I, or anybody. Salim Javed were most confident this will break all records, but none of us thought. 44 years later, we'll be sitting in London talking about
Sholay. So we're going to take a break at this point because I'd like to bring on stage somebody who completes Mr. Sippy. Mr. Sippy completes Hindi cinema, but it's Mrs. Kiran Juneja Sippy who completes him. So Kiranji, please could you join us on stage? A round of applause for Mrs. Kiran Juneja Sippy. Kiranji, how are you?
Very well.
How many times have you heard Mr. Sippy here talk about the same stories about Sholay?
I can hear them in my dreams.
You met Mr. Sippy in the 80s, I believe. But before we come on to Bunyad, I want to talk about Shan. Because Shan is a film in your career that today has a huge cult following, that is considered an incredible action-adventure film. But at the time didn't perform as well as Sholay did. It was still a massive success. But
no, it's absolutely correct. It did very well. It did a lot of business, but certainly nothing compared to Sholay.
Was that disheartening?
Sorry?
Was that disheartening at the time?
It was. It was. But I guess audiences had their reasons. They were able to identify with the role, those close to heart characters like Gabbar, and they were early characters. They were, and I think Shakar was a great character, and but he was not Gabbar for them. For us, he was. We thought this is another reincarnation.
There was a 5-year gap between Sholay and Shan. Was there a gap because you didn't know what to make next, or because of the pressure that Sholay had left you with?
Yes, it took some time to make a decision, because to follow up on a really big film isn't easy. I normally go away from a similar genre. Each film of mine goes the other way, to some other way. But in this case, we again settled for an action adventure. The only difference being that it was a city film, more of a Bond-like film than a Western. in the spaghetti or whatever Hollywood says. I think we did probably made that mistake. We should have brought in Shakti first, which was entirely different.
Which was a family drama.
That was a family drama. And then, if we could have changed things, that's what would have happened. They both started at the same time.
Really?
Yeah, they did.
Shakti and Shan.
Simultaneously.
Wow.
And at some point I got, because of my madness, I couldn't keep up doing two films the way I work, round the clock, everything. So I said, no, let's finish one, then we'll finish the other.
Before we mention Shakti then, just on Shan, again, casting was a really interesting topic here because there were talks at one point of Dharmendra and Hema Malini being part of Shan. That didn't quite work out. What was the situation and how you arrived at that final cast for Shan? Because it was a star-studded ensemble.
Yes, ideally I would have liked Dharmendra and Hema Malini to be there in their Shashi and Shashi Kapoor and India roles. But I felt also, because he had felt in Sholay that the center was not entirely on him. He felt sidelined to some extent. On the one hand is Thakur and the other is Gabbar. He felt a little lost in between. But of course, the moment everything went well and it really took off, he was absolutely fine and he was very happy. But he had a certain reservation, so I didn't want to, but again the role was not really of his, for him to do. He needed something more, and I didn't have it on script to offer him more than that.
Shan is also considered one of Parveen Babi's most beautiful roles as well. She looks stunning in that film, and the late legend would have been 70 years old in the week that's just gone past. What are your experiences of working with Parveen Babi?
Oh, it was extremely enthusiastic. It's just that unfortunately that was the time she went she went into a great depression, and we actually had a set standing in which the main theme song that she sang, and we had to stretch it. The set stood in the studio, that mirrored set where she sings, for more than 1 year.
Wow.
Without a shot being taken. But I waited for her. I thought next month or the next. But she didn't get out of the depression. Then by the time it was 6 or 8 months, I said, no, now we wait. Let her be right, and we will complete this with her.
That song is iconic, maybe one of the most iconic of her legacy. So I'm so happy you did wait that year, otherwise we wouldn't have seen that the way it shaped up. Now simultaneously, this lady over here was making a name for herself in the Indian entertainment industry in the early 80s. How familiar were you, Kiran, with Ramesh sir's work at that time?
She hadn't seen Sholay.
No, really?
So I also came from a family where we were shown one film in 6 months, and they were censored, checked. Can you show it to the kids? You know, there were scenes that they shouldn't be seen. And then I came to Bombay actually to be a model, not an actress. So I had no idea about how big Mr. Sippy was till I actually started working with him. And that's when I went back and started seeing his films. Though I must say, I did not see Sholay, but I knew the lines of Sholay. Because I remember on days that it was a public holiday or a Sunday, I would be trying to sleep in the afternoons and I would hear the records around me going on, Kitne aadmi the, or some other lines, and so because you heard them so many times, you kind of repeated them. I still didn't know that, they were from this film and that's why they were being played. So we never got to see Sholay when I was a kid or when I came to Bombay. And it's only after I met him that I sort of...
Did you watch it together?
No.
I know you would have got director's commentary live while you were watching it.
No. I saw it before that. I checked.
You both worked together for the first time in Bunyad, but had you seen Shakti by that point?
Yes, I think I've seen Shakti.
I have to ask you, sir, about working with two legends, again, Mr. Dilip Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan together in Shakti. How was that experience?
Absolutely unbelievable. Beautiful. We were a little worried offering Mr. Bachchan that role. He had become such a big superstar. But it seemed more of the tailor-made role was Mr. Dilip Kumar's. It was his film in that sense. But yes, the son's role was equally important, but we just felt that it was not really his cup of tea. After becoming such a big star, to come into a less prominent role. And we'd actually taken a test of Mr. Raj Bhatt. We were thinking of casting him. He was good. Turned out later also he did some good roles. But Mr. Bachchan heard of it and said, why not me? So wonderful of him, so nice of him. He told him the truth, that this is the reason. He said, no, I'll do it.
Did that film...
I think he wanted to work with Mr. Dilip Kumar as much as I wanted to work with him, or Salim Javed wanted. It was, I think, it was just mutual.
But did that film change the equation between you and Mr. Bachchan? Because there is an incident where he read a review of Shakti, which praised Mr. Dilip Kumar more than Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, which he came to you with.
Yes. I think Mr. Khalid Mohammed had written something, if I'm not mistaken. He said, literally has Mr. Kumar, literally has Mr. Bachchan for breakfast. Every actor has a certain ego. He was hurt. And I think in this world we have other people who fuel that fire as well. So it happened. For a while he was a little disappointed. But then he himself claimed that it was one of his very fine works. So we are back to that, because there was a point in time during Shakti we were thinking of reshooting,
Really?
making it a more commercial film, but then decided to keep the sanctity of the original in its place as it was conceived and carry on with it. And we stuck to that. I think that was a wise decision.
Of course, after Shakti was Sagar, but moving on to Bunyad.
Please.
And your first impressions of Mr. Sippy. Do you remember the first time you met? I feel like I'm hosting Mr. and Mrs. here, actually, on stage. But do you remember the first time you met?
Of course.
On the sets of Bunyad. So I just came from Delhi, got off my flight, and my secretary came running to me and said, oh, we have to go to Film City. And I'm like, straight from the airport, why do I have to go to Film City? Oh, they're shooting for this big serial called Bunyad, and Mr. Ramesh Sippy is shooting, and for the last 20 days they've been shooting this one scene that is supposed to be shown. And I'm thinking, for 20 days, why are they shooting this one scene? It's too many days in my mind. And so he said, we have to go and meet him there because they shoot till 10 at night. So I went on the sets of Bunyad, and he was shooting at that time with Anita Kavar, and I think Alok Nath was also there with her, and he was shooting a scene. So I actually sat on a cot, which was a part of the set, and watched him do the scene. And then he got a little break in between, and he came and spoke to me about the role. And he said, if you're ready to do it, what about the dates? And we want to shoot like from Monday. And probably this was a Thursday. And I'm like, yeah, I'll make the time. And so there I was, shooting with him from Monday.
But then when did love blossom? When did love blossom?
I don't know. You can't name it, and you can't say, oh, this moment. You know, I mean, when you work together, you kind of grow fond of each other, and you start sharing things, and I really don't know when it happened.
Mr. Sippy, Bunyad is a TV drama that was based on the partition. You were born in Karachi. Did that influence your interest in making that?
I guess it did. The top brass at DD wanted us to make something for DD. And they suggested something about partition, and well, it's a controversial kind of thing to get into, and traumatic memories of what happened. So at that time they said, no, it's okay, fine. Later on, they again came back while it was a huge success. They again said now it's getting, because going into those camps and how people suffered, we avoided a lot of the real violence that took place. And then we had to turn it more into a soap opera after that, keeping those. But yes, it was, I guess the reason for going into it was stimulated by the fact that yes, we also had come down, flown in the month of August 47 to be in India.
You know, I have so many questions for you, but I'm being told from down there that we must wrap up soon. So let's come to today. And Kiranji, if you can tell us what your production company is doing today to keep Mr. Sippy's legacy alive, but also innovate and make new content. What are you working on?
So, like he said, he did films, and then when television came, he tried television. And so right now he feels that he wants to do something in the web space, because that's the latest thing that's in, and he wants to move on with the technology. Besides that, what he's been concentrating on has been a little non-film kind of a thing. So he, for a few years, was thinking of starting a school because he wants to pass on his legacy to the next generation. So we managed to tie up with Mumbai University 2 years ago, and we've started 5 full-time graduation courses with a proper graduation certification. He's very involved in that, interacts with the students, looks into their projects. He's kind of curates the curriculum, and I'm the MD, so I do the running of the academy part of it.
You're the head of the company, though. It's a good place to be in.
Yeah, and I get to do the dirty work, he gets to do the creative part of it.
I have 2 brief questions for you, Sam. There's 2 films that you've worked on, that you've filmed, that haven't made it to the screen yet. One is Shimla Mirch, which is one that you've made with Hima Malini, and was supposed to release. Do we know what's happening with that film?
Sometimes today's world, we have a situation where getting to the theatres isn't an easy, but because there's no real stars in it. Rajkumar Rao has come up a lot since then. When we first completed the film, he wasn't as well known as he is now. He's won a few awards also. So I think it won't be too long before the film is out. But it's with, it's with Viacom. They make the call on the release. So I'm guessing that it won't be too long.
And one other film that you shot in 1987 was shelved at the time, but you're the only filmmaker ever to have directed Madhuri Dixit and Sridevi in one frame together. Would you ever consider releasing those rushes? Because, I mean, they are two iconic actresses of Hindi cinema. The late Sridevi is a legend. A lot of people would want to see that.
I'm afraid that was not a film that I made for myself, it was for someone else. And he had problems of his own and he could not go ahead with the production. And so the film was shelved because it wasn't possible to carry on without proper management. Unfortunately, that's the only film that I started which...
We're never going to see Sridevi and Madhuri Dixit on screen together.
No, but I hadn't shot with them in the same frame yet. About half the film was done, but they had separate roles, and then in the end they would come together.
Well, the several films that you did complete have given us incredible cinema to last a lifetime. Mr. Ramesh Sippy, Mrs. Kiran Juneja Sippy, thank you so much for being here. Ramesh, we're a little bit sexist here on this platform, so Mrs. Kiran Juneja Sippy is going to